Hey everyone. So, what a year this week has been. Am I right? So much stuff is going on. I think between the kids being on spring break in our respective worlds, right? It feels like it goes on forever. Who needs 2 weeks off to do what? They're doing nothing, right? And, work and life and business and the world, it's just a lot. And so I just want to take a moment to kind of recalibrate. I've been having conversations with a lot of my clients. If you don't know, on my day to day, what I do is consultative work, right? I've got people who are business owners who pop in to see me at my office in LA, and we make game plans, we work on vendors, we work on inventory. I mean, it's pretty old school, it's kind of boring, but the work that we do is powerful and it's a lot of fun. But my phone's been ringing off the hook. And that always comes in times of uncertainty. So the first thing I want you to know is if you're feeling any uncertainty, you're not the only one, right? Like relax your shoulders, sis. Take a deep breath and exhale. And just know that at least right now, in this moment, while we're chatting, everything is fine. However, there is a lot happening out there. And the thing that I want to talk about the most right now is the economy. I've been having some conversations, with a lot of you online, in the DMs, with my clients, where, the word economy sounds pretty boring. And I'm sure some of you right now were like, like numbers, budget, but economy isn't just the numbers, the budget, the money. It is how we are interacting in an ecosystem of stuff. Right? Can I get the things I need? Do I have enough money to support it? Will I have extra money for summer camp? Is Botox and tanning going to have to come off the list of must, or will I have the room to be able to do it? And I feel like one of the old aunties now because it's not the fun, sexy conversation, but it is the thing that matters, right? Like, how are we doing? So I want to give you some ease because I know I'm not the only person, but the media gets you worked up. That is part of its job. And I don't mean if you're following one side of the media or the other, because we all know there's the left media, there's the right media, and that is so controversial in itself, But I just want to let you know that the media's job is to make you watch one way or another. So even if you are getting facts from your respective outlet, I want you to know that those facts are often synthesized down to make sure that you feel the most when you hear them. And what I want to do right here is I want to tell you what you need to know to prepare for what's in front of us. I want to tell you what is going to help you feel a lot better about the season we're in. And I also want to give you some honest truths about what you need to know to prepare for yourself, for your family, and for your future. So if you are listening to one chat that gives you some context in normal people speak around what is going on, this is it. So I just want you to know, first of all, that you're gonna be fine. Yeah, I know you need to hear it. You're gonna be fine. We have been, if you've been paying attention to the news at all, you've heard a lot about tariffs, which you may or may not know what that word means, but essentially it is a tax that is placed on goods that are coming into the United States of America. So that means that whenever something lands on our shores, before the company that is going to put it on their shelves and make it available for you and me to buy is able to take possession of that item, they have to pay a little fee, right, in order to be able to get that item, put it on their trucks and bring it to our stores. Now, that fee used to be around 10%. In some places, it was a little more of the cost of the good, right? And now recently, the current administration, in a very different form of policy, because in the past, we always kind of didn't really play with those numbers too much, or if we raised them like 1% or 2%. Well, the current administration wanted to take a very 180 approach, right? They're like, hey, this is how it used to be, and here's how we want to do it. And they've decided that they wanted to accelerate and amplify those tariffs and those numbers by increasing them by as much as 100%. So for a place like China, where we have a ton, they're one of our major trading partners, right? Like you can flip over anything in your house. Honestly, right now, I want you to look around, pick up anything, flip it over to the bottom, and there's probably a made in China sticker on it. And when I tell you that is such a they're such a big trading partner for us that our relationship with them has been a little tense, because we're always trying to figure out what is the balance of making sure that things feel fair. But we have had a way we've done it for a while, which has afforded us the opportunity to have some, goods that are within a certain price point in our life. And our price point with them used to be around 19%. And the current administration decided that they believe it is in the public's interest and in America's interest to raise that tariff to 125%. So naturally, what that means mathematically is when their goods used to land on our shores, that the seller or the vendor or the store, whether it's a Walmart or a Target or a local small business, would pay 20% of whatever it is that came in order to have permission to grab those items and sell them to us. And now they're going to pay 125% in order to be able to get those items and then put them on the shelf and sell them to us. Now, what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Obviously, because we can understand big numbers and little numbers, it means that local businesses, local people, big companies are going to pay a lot more money in order to be able to get items on our shelves. That's just what's going to happen no matter what. The question becomes, who's going to make up the difference? Does it mean that they're going to raise the price of those items? Does it mean that they're just going to say, well, you know what, we'll eat the loss and we'll kind of deal with it and we'll just kind of lower the amount that we keep after the sale? Or does it mean that they're going to pressure the current administration to change policy and do something different? And what does that mean for us as regular people? Because ultimately, you, me, whether you are a 25-year-old who's just trying to figure out how to start your life and start a business, get a home, and figure out your goals or travel, or if you are a mom who has, 4 kids like me, and you try to cover everything from summer camp to Christmas gifts to, lunches, and because I got girls, hair supplies and outfits, what does that mean for our pockets? Well, what it means is things are going to cost more money. That's usually the direction it goes. Historically, consistently, the prices for things go up. And considering that I think we all can agree that it's been kind of tight recently. I think everyone's kind of felt the pinch. The running joke is eggs, right? Costing an arm and a leg, right? Being so expensive. Well, it means that things are going to get more expensive. And that's what's going to bring us to our next thing, right? Our next thing that I wanted you to know is, when things get really expensive and we deal with, the prices going up, that's something called inflation. And whenever we deal with that for a really long time, we can enter a thing called a recession. And I know that word is super scary for a lot of people who understand what it means. A recession is essentially a time where things get hard, for people in a country, where it can be harder to get a job, where there are more layoffs, because companies are saying to themselves, I just don't know if we feel confident about being able to keep our workforce on for the future and also make sure that we can make the money we need to make as a company to keep going. You still see things being pretty pricey, but people struggling to be able to afford them. So they're not buying or going out as much. People aren't buying homes. They're not doing a lot of things that kind of keep an economy roaring. And if you are a seasoned chicken like me, not a spring chicken, like my friend Jen always says, then you remember other recessions. It's not our first one. And you have survived through them. And that is kind of the first point that I want you to know is that as much as the economy can feel like a big, scary thing that you can't quite understand, and we worry about the numbers and we worry about what it's going to mean for our family, you'll be fine. One way or another, you will make it. As long as you make some concerted efforts, some smart decisions. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that soon, about what you can do. But you have survived them before, and it is possible to survive them. First piece of news, let's just get to the good stuff, right? Recession stuff, let's just get to the good stuff, right? Things are tight right now. It's hard to pay for things. We're nervous. We're worried about it. We're wondering what we're going to do. But let's get to what we can do. Now, I first want to throw out a caveat. If you've ever wondered about my political leanings and how I feel about things, follow me on Threads, okay? I am on Threads, and there's something about only having a couple of characters that just lets you be real concise and brief and matter of fact, right? If you follow me on there, we can get into it all day on the politics. But what I want to let you know right now is that no matter what your political leaning is at this point, it doesn't change the fact that you will be impacted by this current administration. Now, for those who did not vote for this current administration, it's really frustrating because they hear that and they hear, oh, I'm part of a group project and I'm getting the group grade, but I did all of the work, right? I did not vote for this situation. And for those, who did vote for this situation, I think that there's a perspective of, well, maybe we wait and see, or maybe some of these things are not what we expected, but the ends justify the means, right? And no matter where you stand on it, it doesn't change the fact that we're all finding out whether or not, we effed around. So that being said, here is what you need to know. Here's the hope portion, right, of our chats that we always have. The first part is we will be fine because recessions on average only last 10 to 17 months. 10 to 17 months. And I think a lot of times in our brains, whenever we think about something bad coming, whether it is a disease or diagnosis or a job change or having to take something on like a project that we may not be excited about, part of what makes it scary is that we feel like it's going to be indefinite. We can't see an end in sight. It feels painful. And I want to let you know that recessions are just not like that economically. They typically don't last longer than 17 months. And the reason why is because the people will burn everything down. That is the fact. It is that if the things don't turn around after a certain amount of time, people will only withstand and absorb so much suffering before they say enough is enough. This is the end. And either the administration that is present is going to have to go, or they will, flip tables until things change, or, the current administration will say, look, we don't want to lose our jobs. An election is coming, and we want to make sure that the people feel like we did a good job and that they're comfortable and that they're happy. So it's going to change because it has to. And if it doesn't change, understand that the conversation we're going to be having here on this little potty is going to be a very different conversation. Okay. It'll be a very, very different conversation. If we are in this situation in 17 to 24 months, you better believe that, on the long end of things, that we're talking stuff that we've never seen before. And I know that that's not a very optimistic route, but I got to let you know, it's been a long, long, long time since that. And here's the next, positive note. To come out of this thing, it's not going to take much, right? In the past, whenever we were dealing with a recession, there was usually something that came on the front end that caused it. So if you remember the housing market crash, that happened as a precursor, as a starting point to the economic situation. Or if you remember, all the banking stuff that we were having going on, this usually happens as a precursor, right? It's the thing that is the cause, and the effect is we see it impacted in our economy. Well, this time, what we're dealing with is a policy shift. Thoughts, ideas, and words are what are causing this economic situation, which also means that the fix isn't something that is as long-term or as big as like a bailout like we had to do for homes and for banks. This recession, these pain points can end with as much as a tweet or an X or a thread. Whatever it is that people are using now, if this current administration simply changes up some of their policies, then people are going to have more confidence in our future. And we're going to see that on the global market, which means that we're going to end up with a better economic situation. We won't be stuck where we are, and we're going to feel a little more breathing room. So that means that we don't actually have to feel this pinch for much longer, as long as people are responsive to the vocal cries, right, of the people and making it clear, hey, this is where we are. A simple example of that would be around tariffs. We've been hearing about them, I think, all during election season. The current administration was very vocal that this is exactly what they're going to do, that this is their chosen method of economic policy, and that they feel that this is what's best for our country. And so, when they were voted into place, I think a lot of people who maybe may not have voted for them didn't take that as hyperbole. They didn't take that as pretend. They said, this is what's going to happen. And that's exactly what they did. And so when that came around and we, saw these coming into place, or at least the conversation around them coming into place, there was actually a lot of flack. And a lot of that flack actually came from people who had voted for this administration because they maybe didn't think that the numbers would be as high, or they thought that the process would take a little longer, or that there may be a more measured approach. However, this administration, I think, is, and to many people's delight, right? This administration has been very aggressive in their policy reversals, decisions and approach. And, the way that the world works and the way the economy works is the economy likes stability. It likes predictability and it likes measured approaches. Humans like that, right? It's kind of like you don't spring up potty training on your kid and say, okay, cold turkey, no diapers, no anything. You're going to end up with pee everywhere, right? We are experiencing the economic version of pee everywhere. Okay, so that being said, the upside of that, and that we've already witnessed, is when people responded saying, hey, this is kind of terrible and the markets are tripping out, there was a reversal, and we keep kicking the can down the road. So right now, you're listening to this, chat in April, but tariffs aren't supposed to be fully into play until June. So that means that, we'll know more then, right, how things work. But if the current administration changes their mind, then even better, we're looking at a situation of stability on some level. But what that means, again, as the hopeful piece is, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. And so now I want to give you an assignment, right? I want to tell you the third thing you can do to really help you and your family, right? And that is plan. The average recession results in additional expenses for families at around $3,800. And it results in additional expenses for individuals of around $1,700. So what does that mean? It means right now you can save, you can budget, you can get a side hustle, you can join the gig economy by doing things like TaskRabbit or Uber. There are lots of different ways that right now you can say, how can I make sure that I am, and making sure that I've got a little bit of a backup plan because no one's coming to save me, right? And if Nicole's wrong, which, just to be clear, I receive entirely. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we are headed for a roaring good financial time. But like I said, she's not new to this. She's true to this. Okay. This is not my first time. And I can tell you all the signs are saying that we are already in a recession, if we were really going to talk about it, and some of y'all are nodding your head like, girl, I've been feeling it for a while, right? We're already in it. So I just want to let you know that those are the numbers. If you can say to yourself, I can cut back a couple $100s here and there a month, or, maybe we're going to take down some of those streaming apps, maybe we don't need Netflix and Disney, if you're saying to yourself, we're going to do, instead of, 12 weeks of summer camp, we're going to do 8 weeks of summer camp, and we're going to keep the kids home for 2 weeks at the beginning and pull them out 2 weeks early at the end. All of those things are not the best feeling, right? It doesn't feel good to say like, hey, I'm not ordering Uber Eats as often and we're just going to get a couple of meals from Sam's Club, but these are the little changes that make a world of difference when it comes to your bottom line and helps protect you in these seasons and prepare you for what may come in the future. And again, if Nicole is wrong, I'm really excited for you to have the extra funds in your family, because at the other side of a recession usually is a big economic turnaround, right? You end up being in a place where costs do come down and things are more affordable, and, the market does open up and interest rates do drop, so if you start saving now, you may be able to buy up a whole city block, you may be able to finally take that trip or start that business, and that is something to look forward to. But no matter what, it is in your interest and it is in your family's benefit for you to start saying to yourself, what changes can I make now to prepare me for tomorrow? And the very last thing, and this one is important, and I say this to you as your friend, your guide, your cheerleader, in a lot of ways, your test dummy, because you guys see me out here making mistakes and doing things on my own, but sharing what works and what didn't. I want to tell you that you have a voice. You have the ability to speak to your hired elected officials of your local regions and your neighborhoods and your towns to say, hey, I put you in this role and this is what we need. And furthermore, with that voice, it's not dictated by who you voted for. If you voted a certain way and you are feeling like the outcomes are not reflective of what you desire, then you have the right, ability, and I'd say moral obligation to speak up and make sure that things head the direction that you feel is in the interest for not just your family, but for the greater good of the community. And it's easy enough to do that. You can reach out online and find out your elected official's information. You can place a phone call and leave a message. It doesn't have to be wordy or complicated. You can say, "Hey, I'm one of your constituents. I'm located in this area. This is how I feel about this policy, and here's what I want to see happen." And then at the end of that call, you should ask for a result. And that result should be, I would like a phone call back letting me know what the next steps will be. I would like an email response, or I would like a letter to be shared to my home letting me know that you've received this message and what your intended outcome will be. Understand that every single elected official is placed there by the people. The power of the people is greater than the people in power. And it is important for us to use and leverage the fact that they work for us to make sure that our families are thriving and that we have an outcome that is reflective of a future that we want. And this is your little reminder that you can do exactly that. We're going to make it. It's going to be fine, but we have some work ahead of us. And I know that we can do it together.